Hello. Morning, Jonas.
Okay, had to get off mute. So who's all here? Hi, Jos. Hi, Susan.
Yeah. Hi, Jos.
So I thought you were going to be late, Susan.
No, we actually just ended a meeting with Joseph's folks. It went really well, and we got done a few minutes early. So there you go.
Oh, cool. Cool.
I'm glad it went well, Susan. How are you all? This is Jos.
Great.
Yeah, doing well. Doing well.
Great. Yeah, I started getting conflicts nowadays for that time, so I couldn't attend this morning's meeting.
Boy, yeah, mine's always full because of the worldwide thing. Those are prime time hours to get together with India, for sure.
Right. That's true.
So you have Bob.
John.
Marcin. Oh, yeah. I should change my HPE thingy.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Alex, Bob. So I guess, oh man, today we had something on the agenda. We want to present the proposed release management plan, but we also had something before that. So let's look at, I think that was Luis that teed something up.
Hey everyone. Yeah, we're going to have Heather on, talk about telco, CSP, and cross community.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and there she is.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. I was having a little bit of blippiness in my internet connectivity.
Good morning, Heather.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. I'm back.
Hi, Bob, Heather. You know, you are like a bad penny. Everywhere I go, there you are. Or am I the bad penny? And everywhere you go, there I am. Was your trip okay?
Yeah, it was good. And I was lucky enough to get out of there before too much snow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my parents sent me photos. It snowed in North Carolina this weekend, like several inches up in some of the passes.
I was a little concerned yesterday morning.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bob and I will stop sharing pleasantries, but good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or evening, depending on your time zone. I'll let Louis do the antitrust policy, and then we can chat a little bit about LFN and telco and whatever y'all would like to talk about with respect to that topic.
Sounds good. So there's our antitrust policy. Everyone's seen it. Link there for the full Linux Foundation antitrust policies there in the second paragraph. So everyone's seen it. No one's in trouble. Just standard fare, right, to put up there. Hey, folks. So we talked about talking about LFN and telco participation, CSPs, cross-community collaboration. And we had talked about bringing Heather in to discuss it with the team. So this was the day that we had agreed on. So I thank you, everyone, and thank you, Heather. For those who don't know Heather, she wears many hats and outstanding resource here at LFN, one of which is VP of NFV Ecosystem development. Heather, lots of other hats, as you know, right? So how do you want to start, and then sort of open it up for questions?
Yeah, sure. So also, hello, Jonas, a long time no talk. So why don't y'all, I mean, one thing I would like to maybe bring to the table is sort of an opportunity just to address some of the LFN communities coming up in February. But besides that, why don't, I don't know, some of y'all sort of give me a little bit of context and background about sort of what, why y'all wanted to invite me here. I mean, I've talked to Lewis a little bit, but I'd love to hear it straight from y'all, so to speak.
Sure, and people feel free to jump in. I guess we started this project just like I think we would call it a technical project to start with. Now I don't know how we refer to it, but without an umbrella organization, mostly because we wanted something quick up and running, but also because we didn't know if, how it will take off, and exactly, we couldn't really see any organization that, because you see, we come from telco, some of us, but they're also the thinking that some of our things we're working on in this project will be applicable to the larger industry as well. So it wasn't a given where we should go. And I guess that's why we are looking a little bit at some of we're missing some features today, being an unfunded project. So we're looking a little bit at the LFN and other alternatives. So to get your input would help. Anybody else, Alex, or somebody else?
Yeah, I'll say a few words. Hi, Heather. This is Alex.
Hi, Alex. Also good to see you again, virtually.
Yes, last time on a train to The Hague, I guess, is when we saw each other.
I don't think it was to The Hague. I think it was to. I think it was in.
It was Germany.
Yeah, it was.
Where the hell were we? I don't even know. But
it was at Deutsche Telekom.
Yeah, the OSN days.
Alex.
Oh yes,
that's it.
And I think you were about to take a train to The Hague, and I was about to take a train to Heidelberg.
Right.
Back in the days when we could do such things.
So just to add to what yeah, exactly. Just to add to what Jonas was saying, we started this community with the objective of addressing the distributed infrastructure management needs, not only for the telecom space, but also for other market segments like the enterprise, and really anyone who is out there doing huge deployments of hardware on a distributed, scale, I guess I would say. Yeah. So that would include, your enterprise service providers, as well as managed hosting providers, just to name a few, HPC, anyone who deals with huge big data clusters, all of these deployments these days kind of predicated on the use of edge computing to some extent. And so this is, why we kind of chose the telecom space as the foundation for the use cases that we have. But ultimately, I'd like to understand which umbrellas within Linux Foundation would have a broader scope than just the telecom kind of focus that some of them clearly have. Yeah. Right. Yeah. We need to establish credibility with. We need to establish credibility with the enterprise communities, centric communities, as well as telecom, and that's kind of the source of my question. If we go and say become part of LFN. What does that mean to our image as a community that is not just focused on the telecom space?
Right. So, I mean, one thing to keep in mind is as LFN is growing, and our membership is also evolving and growing. I think that we also very much came out of telecom, but also see interest from folks who also are struggling with some of the same kind of distributed infrastructure issues. Google just recently joined us at the platinum level, kind of for that reason, because they see sort of, a little bit of a, broader reach here. We are actually talking to some enterprise folks. I think that, what we're beginning to realize is some of the challenges that, we really focus on solving. It's almost like telecom has to solve the hardest version of the use case, but some of the things that we are, some of the things that we're working on, we are also finding that some other folks are facing similar challenges with distributed infrastructure as well. So certainly, there is a great deal of telecom in the heart of both the brand and the membership of LFN, but I don't think that is, sort of the only place where we are. And I certainly think that Lewis took me through some of the basic primer of what you're solving yesterday, and I definitely see some applicability to to our communities, and also see that it is it is broader. The other place that would potentially make sense to me is LF Edge for y'all, and and it might be worth potentially having a conversation with Arpit as well, because he is also deeply involved in LF Edge. I'm a little bit more focused on LFN, to be honest, but it could be an interesting conversation perhaps to have with him as well, to sort of look at those two orgs side, those two umbrellas side by side, to see which one aligns with your long-term goals and ambitions as well.
There's another option as well that maybe we should talk about here to some extent, and just, either remove it from the table or, continue to explore it. And that is setting up an umbrella focused on physical infrastructure management.
Yep.
There are other projects in LF like Open BMC that, are very specific to the space that we're operating in. In fact, there should be a lot of synergy between that project and what we do. And so that's the other question in my mind. Can we establish a new umbrella? And what would be the downsides and the upsides of doing that?
Yeah. I mean, the very obvious downside is that is a very big investment of time and potentially money. if you're wanting to do that. That's working with the umbrellas like CNCF, LFN, LF Edge. I know a little bit about LFAI. Those do tend to require a fair bit more of investment. And by fair more investment, I mean significantly more investment than joining an established umbrella.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think now with you, are you able to present a little bit on LFN then? And I guess the concern from you, Alex, has been a little bit like we're going to go in and perhaps be associated with telco exclusively. But if that organization is growing and there are other industry segments that could be applicable, then that might be less of a concern, is what you're saying, right?
Well, we could drag them in, right? It's just that in the way I see it today, I mean, and I've been involved in some of the communities under that umbrella, obviously, but the way I see it is that the greatest level of uptake is in, across the tier 1 operators, right, and tier 2 operators to some extent, but really in the telecom market segment, right? When you talk about LFN or LF Edge to to enterprise companies, they just kind of say, well, yeah, that's not for us. That's just too complicated, too constrained. And Heather kind of alluded to the fact that telco has to solve the hardest versions of the use cases because it has to be carrier grade, right? You know, and so, but the enterprise companies don't necessarily feel like they have to, right? And so if we want to start establishing, you know, kind of dragging in upstream orchestration players that are not telco centric, not specifically focused on MANO as we know it in the telco space, then I think we might have a little trouble convincing them that we're not just for the telecom. On the flip side, you know, this is maybe an opportunity to
Right.
expand the base of participating companies to include key players from the enterprise and managed hosts. I mean, I would love to see Equinix or QTS or some of these other big, huge international, you know, multinational hosting companies join in and provide their use cases, both for networking as well as for, you know, other aspects of what needs to be done. And you know, I'll say one more thing. What we're focused on is not just networking centric, right? You know, management of distributed infrastructure we talk about spans compute, storage, networking, acceleration devices, etc. And yeah, and so I'm just still kind of trying to understand how that would work, right? Because there's certain approaches to managing those kinds of devices and that kind of bare metal in the telecom space, which is somewhat different to what one would do in other markets, right? And so that's really the crux of my worry, right? It's not really a big thing, but I just want to make sure we cross the T's and dot the I's.
Right.
But Heather,
Yes,
didn't this is Thomas Frederick? Didn't Packet, which is now a part of Equinox, didn't they join LFN?
I believe they did, although honestly, I would need to go look at our recent onboarding. I know that we have been having more and more conversations with Packet recently. Yeah, I'm almost thinking, you know, that someone like Mike Worcester might also be a good person to bring into this conversation, either Mike or Arpit. They are a little bit closer to some of our current, you know, kind of what I would call non-telecom traditional market segment, you know, sort of recruitment efforts, you know, around some projects that we are having conversations with. I'm also not sure what is currently sort of public in some of those recruitment efforts or not. So, you know, I might suggest that could be useful as well. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good initial conversation because, you know, I haven't, you know, really been involved in this group that much. And so, you know, I also, you know, what I thought would be useful would be to, you know, I guess for me, is this conversation to understand some of your ambitions and where you want to grow and where you see applicability for the technology. And then, you know, kind of getting to where I spend the majority of my time, you know, within LFN. I'm not sure if everyone here is aware of this, but CNTT and OPNFE are in the process of merging right now to form a new project called Anuket. Bob, I know, is very deeply aware of this, but
I've heard of it.
You know, looking at sort of telecom infrastructure sorry. I'm still drinking my first cup of coffee. But looking at sort of, you know, infrastructure requirements and infrastructure implementation. And one thing that is slightly orthogonal to the conversation we're currently having is especially some of the stuff that I've seen in your intro materials around hardware acceleration and some of the hardware management, I think would definitely be applicable to some of the challenges that we are trying to solve there. And I think it would be very useful to, at the very least, as we continue kind of what I think is a longer term conversation about your long-term home. And fate would be to certainly get those conversations off the ground, because I think that if this technology can help solve a problem there, that could be, whatever your sort of longer term plans are, that could definitely be an early win for ODIM, and it could help solve a challenge that I'm seeing in front of me with some of my community and constituents right now.
So Heather, just to go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree to that. I'm part of the CNTT reference model as well, and there we're definitely tackling the hardware accelerators. But hardware acceleration is far more than just hardware. It's the complexity comes a lot on the software levels as well. So I think both forums are needed.
Yeah.
So just to kind of follow up on what Thomas was just saying, right? So Packet Networks, right? They've joined, Packet joined Equinix. We've actually spoken to them about the focus of this community, and they said that this is not a priority for them. And so the broader question is, if we join an umbrella like LFN, this does not mean that the companies that are part of that umbrella are necessarily endorsing the work that we're doing here, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, there's the process of joining is not every member says, oh, we're definitely going to use you and we're definitely going to deploy you. It is we believe that you are working on relevant, important technology that we want to foster and help grow and explore and may want to incorporate in our stacks.
But it also means that they have the options of helping out if they feel like it, right? So that's why, that's the big benefit as I see it, that, okay, so we're there in the umbrella organization and we have the same structure set up. So it will sort of, they do not actively have to reach out and say, yes, we're going to join, we're going to be participants. Right. They can just join up, right?
Yeah, but I guess they have that option today, if they feel that something is important, right? Whether
what do you mean by that, Alex? Do you mean like they can contribute? Yes, it's an open source project, but can they help making decisions and all that? And I don't know how that works in LFN either.
Well, they could anybody. Today, right? As an unfunded, incubating project, anybody can join who feels that this work is relevant. Whether they're part of LFN or LFEdge or anything else for that matter, right?
I think the difference might just be visibility, right?
Yeah.
And
right. So that's what I'm trying to get at, right? What's the
CNCF? I just want to do a time check here because we have 9. I think we can go on with this for another 10.
Well, and
minutes,
to me, this feels like the beginning of a conversation, which I think would be very useful to continue. The one thing that I definitely would like to do is invite this group to submit a talk into the. We do have an LFN. It's free to attend, free to participate. Technical. Developer and testing event coming up the first week in February. And I would really love to suggest that this group submit a proposal into that, if for no other reason than to get a conversation going between this group and NUCET.
Heather, what was the name of the event? Sorry,
yeah, let me drop a link into the chat. It's the LFN Developer and Testing Forum. And we will have an NUCET track going. There will also be an ONAP track and likely Open Daylight and Tungsten Fabric tracks. So let me.
What's the relationship between this umbrella and CNCF? Because probably the greatest uptake of what we're doing from a non-telecom perspective would come from that group.
Right.
So they're kind of an umbrella in their own right.
Yes, they are an umbrella in their own right. They are probably at the moment the largest umbrella that LF has, focused on, sort of things that are specific to cloud, furthering cloud native principles and cloud native. So I'm not sure that would be the exact right home, because if I look at this from what I understand is this is a little bit broader. This can apply to sort of any type of distributed infrastructure. CNCF is very focused on cloud native, and things in the, very specific to sort of the, a Kubernetes based stack. Although, I believe that this can fit in very well with a Kubernetes based stack. So they are basically, they're a peer umbrella to LFN, and we do have a good working relationship with them. We're collaborating on things like their newly launched CNF requirements, where they are looking at sort of the requirements from a adherence to cloud native principles point of view. And we've been looking at it from what are the additional networking requirements? What are some additional things like acceleration and performance requirements? So we're a bit more opinion. So we're a little bit, kind of vertically stacked on what would be considered cloud native for them. We're looking at a more opinionated for high throughput network intensive workloads.
And CNCF has a task force for telecom.
Yeah, they have a telecom user group.
Yeah, and so what is the relationship between that body and what you guys are working on?
Yeah, so, as I said, it's sort of a little bit, the telecom user group is really focused on what are the challenges, kind of, we're coming at sort of a similar problem from different perspectives, where CNCF is coming at it from how do we help telecom adopt cloud native, whereas we are coming from the perspective of how do we help cloud native understand telecom use cases and maybe introduce additional into cloud native stacks, and what would be a slightly more opinionated stack for network intensive workloads.
Will I get a copy?
Yeah, I'll email you one.
You're going to? Okay.
What's your email address?
My first name, Jose.
Somebody can go on mute.
Jonas, I think you need to mute.
No, it's
No, it's not me.
It's yours.
Sorry, I was looking for the link for the developer event.
I have it, Heather. I'll send it out.
You're seeing you want to see some early traction with CSPs. It sounds as though there are definitely some folks here. I know that, as Tomas was saying, there are other complexities outside of the hardware, but the hardware is part of it. I would just like to make sure that, sort of the broader ANUCAT community is aware of, so think of that as formerly CNTT and OPNFV, is aware of this work and aware of how this work can help solve some of the challenges being looked at there.
There's some other, so yeah, Heather, there's some other things that we potentially could do, right? It's not all, kind of, the value of this is that if you look at the emerging sort of management solutions, they're predominantly cloud-centric, right?
Yep.
You can deploy things across multiple sites, but the way you deploy things now is kind of moving towards as a service model.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you look at next generation CMPs, right, cloud management platforms, whether they're used for telecom or enterprise use cases, there's a need to build, for example, recommendation engines that can compare apples to apples when they recommend particular deployment topologies, a choice of hardware or whatever. And so, OPNFV has some projects where standardized benchmarks have been worked on for quite some time, and bringing those in and, being able to, maybe relax them for certain use cases and keep them as they are for the telco ones. Yep. That may be a very useful exercise. I guess what you guys, what's your future, right? Are you guys going to push into the enterprise edge? Are you going to push into the, software-defined networking for the enterprise as well? because everything we've said so far has been telco, 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 right? And that's exactly what I'm scared of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be blunt, right now my own personal focus is very telecom centric, but I think the future vision of LFN is not necessarily telecom centric.
Okay.
And that's what, and we had a conversation with Arpit on this, and he has, made the claim that there's definitely a desire to really expand LFN into enterprise and into, other sectors, right? But we're just not sure that there's specific, it's not really clear what specific actions are underway to sort of facilitate that or make that happen. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think sort of the first area where we are seeing some traction and collaboration is definitely with the large web scalers, like sort of Google coming on and some of Google's next generation management platforms and things like that, where they want to collaborate with us on some of that.
Okay.
And where is that link?
Heather, I had already sent it out to everybody.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Events link. That I also sent the wiki as well, so everyone should have it on the chat.
Yeah, so I've been referencing ANUCAT just so people know the timeline on that. We will have sort of the new organization in place legally by the end of the year, and we will be launching it publicly in January.
Okay, so
and also based on as you're sort of going through this decision-making process, and this is just coming from the process of working with CNTT and OPNFV to sort of figure out what their future was, because CNTT was originally external to the Linux Foundation. Even it was a joint sort of informal task force between GSMA and LFN. One of the things that we did is before we sort of, got into a, should we go here, should we go here, we sort of sat down and created a set of decision-making guidelines and principles. And from that generated a couple options. And then, sort of went through, kind of worked up what each of those would look like, and then evaluated them against those decision-making principles. And, what, fell out once we did that exercise became a lot more obvious. And so it might be worth it to sit down and think through, based on your sort of longer term ambitions, what your high priorities are and what your non-priorities and what your anti-priorities are, and create sort of a set of decision-making principles. And then start looking at some options, and then, compare each of them to those principles and to those goals. We found it very helpful when we were doing that exercise.
That's a very good input, Heather. Thank you very much. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Wasn't shaping this better.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I think that I have probably extended my time, but I look forward to kind of continue to help talking you through where the right long-term home for your work is. I mean, at the end of the day, all of us are actually Linux Foundation employees with, certain areas where we focus. And, as a Linux Foundation project, we are here to help you figure out the way for your community and technology to best flourish, and that will definitely be the perspective with which, I sort of, come in to help you make this. I also want to figure out how some of the communities that I'm involved with deeply on a day-to-day basis might be able to leverage this to solve some of our issues.
Right.
All right.
Cool. Thank you, Heather.
All right.
Really
take care.
appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks
bye.
a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
So just to conclude there, I think we need to probably write some sort of a proposal for that event, the LFN Developer and Testing Forum in February, and submit that. That's my thinking. I guess a lot of the LFN projects we have already, they're mostly aware of ODIM, but still it would be good to have something in there. Yes.
I think we can talk about, maybe some of the ambitions that we have, right? And see if we can even spark some interest within the LFN umbrella to explore their horizons a little bit.
Yep.
So Jonas, Alex, and everybody, this is Jose again. I'm just trying to understand from the high level, right? Now, what's our goal? Are we trying to have our ODIM code base hosted under or supported by LFN, or are we hoping to attract more partners?
Yeah, I think that's it. The code will not move, is my understanding. It will be in our GitHub, right? But I think it's more about, so there is pros and cons, and the advantages I see is to get visibility for all those projects, to be one of the projects in the larger organization, and by existing there, you obviously have more visibility to the members. Absolutely. I mean, we have been talking to a lot of them. It's just that whoever is working on a daily basis there might see ODIM then. The disadvantage is that we will be associated with the telco industry, at least as LFN has come across in the past. That's my thinking.
Okay, so if we don't want to be associated with telco, I wouldn't say that, but if that is one of the things, and what other options do we have? Like, is there a much?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, we are not. I don't know how we define success here, but we don't have more hardware vendors contributing, and this is a big problem for us. And I think we have to weigh that against being associated with telco and see what we can do to shake things up, right?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I guess I wouldn't put it quite as strongly as we don't want to be associated with telcos. We want to encompass both telco and other spaces, right? So it's not that we want to exclude others at the expense of one particular market segment.
Yeah, we want to be more inclusive, right? That's what you're trying to say.
My fear is to, and again, this is something for us to really try and understand. We need to be very intentional about, what we say, because some of the hardware vendors that, I mean, yes, they all play in the telecom space, but HP, others also have a big presence in the enterprise space. Collectively, everybody's trying to drive things towards converged commodity-based infrastructure, but again.
That is true. That is true. Yeah. So she also
there is also the tools ultimately. Sorry, Jose. There's also we don't have access to some Jira and these type of things today, and I think LF has kind of helped us out here initially, but we will get more support if we were in an umbrella organization like that.
Okay, so let me ask a very dumb question. So if we get or involved or get into LFN, will we still be ODIM, which is part of LFN, or how is that?
Yeah.
Going to play?
I mean, we will still be ODIM, and we will still be under Linux Foundation. We just belong to that umbrella organization. I understood. I was initially worried about participating companies not being members of LFN, but apparently I understood from Luis that is not really a concern.
That's true.
That
is correct.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think that
I hate to do this, but we are also a little bit today. We also wanted to go through a proposal that we put together for the release management process, and I envision some discussions there as well. of course, that can spill into the next meeting as well. No issues there. But is there anything else we want to say before we wrap this up? And
yeah, one last thing that I would suggest, Jonas, is Heather also suggested meeting with LF Edge or Arjit or somebody, right?
Yeah.
Before meeting that person, we may want to spend some time on whatever ambitions are. She had few topics that said, what we want to do, what's our high priority, low priority, what is our anti-priority, those kind of things. So we can get the best of that conversation, right? That's my input.
I think that's a good lead into that. And ARPIT also runs LF Edge. So ARPIT can give you a nice like side-by-side comparison between the two umbrellas, just to sort of see where the best fit might be. So I think ARPIT would be a good person. I'll huddle with ARPIT internally, and then we might consider having. I know a lot of folks on here already spoke with ARPIT and know ARPIT, but he would be a good person to provide that comparison just to see what makes the most sense.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you. Yeah. That's very helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
Jonas, I think you should. Yeah, you can move on to the.
In that topic, if I may. So just like LFN can be associated with telco, LFH might put us on another corner.
Yep. Agreed.
Yep. So I'll be worried on that as well.
I have a lot to say about LF Edge, and I'm going to try to influence the rest of you, of course, because I have an agenda like everybody else. But I think we should save that discussion for when we have that. Perhaps we invite ARPIT or somebody into TSC to give us a little bit background and make it a more fair comparison.
I would, Jonas, and thank you for being transparent about the agenda and all that. Let me also kind of throw out some things on that front. One possibility is that given that CNA appears to be the future direction of just about every software development effort out there that's modern, be it enterprise, telecom, whatever related, perhaps joining forces with CNCF would be another option, right? Certainly. Yeah, so okay. There's something to ponder as well, right? The way I would, between given choice of LFN and LF Edge, I would probably pick LFN, but I wouldn't be so quick to pick LFN if CNCF was part of the landscape as well.
As long as CNCF accept hardware, management hardware.
Oh yeah, that's interesting, William, right? Because they've been talking about.
But can we please not get into this discussion now? Now I'm down to 19 minutes on the release management, because I think it's fair if we invite these guys. We know CNCF obviously fairly good, right? But if we invite the other guys and we do the comparisons after we had discussions with them, we all have different viewpoints, I'm sure, and we will have time to vent those. So with that, then Susan, can you just present? We have actually documented as well on the release management wiki page the complete draft, but this is just to give a little bit of a higher overview, so you don't have to read up and form an opinion. You can form an opinion from this, and then perhaps use the document to just get the details. And obviously, keep in mind that this is just a draft. Input should be given, and we should make changes as you guys see fit. All right, Susan.
Yeah, you bet. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm Susan Bowen. I'm at HPE. I'm a program manager, and I am working on ODIM. And this is about getting ready to work on release management for the open source ODIM releases. As Jonas said, we put together a draft for your review and input. And this first piece really focuses on the cadence of the releases and then the proposed, content of releases. So I've got 3 slides to go through. This first one is a graphical overview of what would happen in 1 year. And then there are 2 subsequent slides that talk more about the definition of a major release and the definition of a minor release. So let's suppose, for the sake of discussing this slide, that it is January 31st in 2021, and we have done our first release of open source ODIM. There are 2 major releases in dark blue on this slide. So the first one would start February the 1st, and it would run for 6 months. This is a feature development cycle. So there's 5 months of feature development. And then there is an integration period that starts minus 4 weeks from the release time, and that continues for 2 weeks. It's basically a chance to call a feature freeze and have everything tested and QA'd together. There's also a period of having release candidates, and that goes on for 2 weeks. The result of all this is that on July 31st, there is a new release of open source ODIM. The second cycle on the lower right-hand side of the screen is exactly the same thing. It starts August the 1st, and it terminates the following January the 31st. In addition to that, we've also included 2 maintenance releases. There are no new features in these releases. It is strictly focused on defect fixes. So they begin right after each major release, and they go on for 3 months. There's 2 months of defect fixing, and 2 months and 2 weeks of defect fixing, and then we go into the same kind of release candidate period and small release. So these would be .1 releases.
And there is no integration period there because there is no integration of features needed. So that's
Susan, can I ask a quick question on
Sure.
this? So another way to do this would be more of a CI/CD pipeline, where we do continuous integration, continuous development, and then we take snapshots of stable features every so many months and call them releases.
No, this is not excluding that, Alex. Of course, I mean.
Well, let me finish my thought, Jonas. Yeah. This is fine, right? Except that it's a little bit out of step with what other Linux Foundation projects would be doing.
Not really. I mean, we got this from the presentation by, I forgot his name, David McBride or something. And this is just a slimmed down version of that because we don't need to manage the sub-projects, right?
Right. I guess I'm a little concerned still that it'll take 6 months to have a release end.
Well, how many releases do you feel we should have per year then? I mean, the alternative is to have 4.
Well, let me ask you a question then, right? So we're out to foster an ecosystem of plugins. We're out to foster maybe some additional capabilities that will not show up on, in Fast and Furious. But at least from a plugin perspective, I want us to, kind of ponder this maybe a little bit is, I might want to be able to introduce plugins all the time.
There is that's why you have the development branch. You can introduce anything all the time. But
right.
You have to have some sort of
I don't want to say that I have to wait another 5 months for a plugin or something to be available in some approved blessed release.
Well, we had this discussion from the very beginning that you wanted to sandbox things till they were mature enough, and I think the process of saying that this is available in an official release is doing that. If you need it before, just clone the development branch, right?
Okay, so what you're saying is that this does not preclude other experimental features and more volatile features from being available and being compatible with a particular commercial release or distribution.
No, exactly. I mean, we because we are putting our foot down and say we're going to have 2 releases, there might be big features coming in that will not make it because we discover some some showstoppers as far as big bugs and you know, of different type of major nature. And HPE might look at that and say, well, guess what? We need this thing. So we might not take the release then. We might take the release plus a week after, because then it's when it has been fixed, and suck that down. I'm just saying from a project point of view.
No, I get it. I think we just need to kind of maybe spell that out a little bit more, because it's not exactly clear. Like the way I look at it, oh, we're going to do two releases a year. Everything has to be in there. Whatever's not moves into the next release. And
yeah, and this goes into how we branch this as well. We need to discuss that, and I think we have left that a little bit open. But I think, you know, with it, when you
so
start
a question on that.
Yep, go ahead.
Because yeah, is it possible that we maintain like, okay, this is for the core, and then the plugins be on their own release cycles, such that the plugin just maintain compatibility with whatever core versions they decide to support, but they do not affect the release cycle of the core, and the core does not affect the release cycle of the plugin?
That is very possible. I think initially what we have done now is that, and that goes into the sub-project type of concept, but what we did with, I think what we have an ongoing plugin is from Intel, which is an unmanaged racks, and that lives in a separate branch now, and I think the way to go, what you are proposing, William, would be to have it in a perhaps separate repo, and just make sure that we have that released in its own release cycle.
Well,
but
no,
we might still need to make sure that it works together. Yeah. So
how you keep, you know, how you persist your code versus how you release the code together, to me, is not, you know, tightly coupled. I mean, we can do whatever in terms of, you know, having a separate distro, or a separate repo rather, or keep things in a branch, or do whatever. I think what I'm kind of after is what William is sort of asking also. There are two kinds of plugins, northbound and southbound. And
I don't see any northbound plugins, but sure.
Well, potentially, right? You know, we haven't seen those yet, but we would want to develop them for upstream integrations. Otherwise, we're just, you know, if we want to jumpstart things. But anyway, that's a different point. Whichever way you want to look at it, it's likely that a given version of the plugin is, you know, might span multiple releases.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, where we keep the code, how we version that code, you know, it's really, to me, it's more about interface, versioning, interface taxonomy, because, you know, that's really what's going to dictate the applicability of a given plugin, right?
Well, I mean, you know, by the end of the day, of course, you may choose not to talk about if they live in its own repository or if they live in a separate branch. But by the end of the day, somebody has to poke around in that. And I think the other thing that needs to happen, if specifically for plugins that are actually having a leg into the things like the message bus and stuff, is that we have to have some sort of an integration period where we say, oh, you developed a plugin, that's all great. Does it actually work? Right?
Yeah.
Does it make something go crazy? Does it? I mean, so if you have something on the top that can live in its own repository and is completely independent of ODIM, then it's much easier to have that live in its own release cycle and its own, you know. So, you know, one way forward might be to do exactly what William is suggesting, which is, you know, we have the immutable kind of common core for ODIM. And that may consist of, you know, kind of core services like the eventing mechanism, the bus, or whatever we want to, or buses that we would want to support under the covers, you know, the plug and play interfaces, kind of like all the mandatory content that you cannot live without if you were to deploy ODIM. And then all the pluggable content could live in separate branches or separate repos, I don't care which, but what they would have to comply with is the specification of the interface exposed by the core. And the integration testing is really
You know, it's the same interface integration testing that OpenStack still does. You know, where it's really rigorous.
This proposal is then for the core, right? The release management proposal that we have here is for the core. So whatever is in the core today and what might be in the core in the future, when we are moving to a more loosely coupled way of interacting between services, is obviously something we should leave open, right?
Well, we should at least be more precise. Yes, I agree. So this is another thing we need to do, is then look at what the core should have in it, because I'm not necessarily convinced that what's there today belongs in the core altogether.
Yeah, but that's a different topic. I mean, if let's say we move to gRPC, for instance, then we can start breaking out all those services, and we can decide what are the services that actually everybody needs, and that could be the core. But I think that's a discussion separate from the release management process.
One other thing, just based on my own app experience, all of this requires a lot of people. Yeah. And we've attempted to do maintenance releases in ONAP several times. And at least my impression of that was that, there were no new people supplied by the member companies to do a maintenance release. And so, we would end up kind of double timing, like overbooking people that were working both on the mainstream release and the maintenance release. And as a result, things would slip. Just want to, word of caution that, it might be easier to do more frequent cadence of major releases rather than try to do maintenance in parallel.
Yeah, no, that's good input. That's the type of input we're looking for here, right? The other thing I was thinking is, so we would not form a project QA team when we release, and when we have an RC0 or RC1 or something. In the release branch, we would just look for the community to go and do their own testing. Is the proposal today, and I want feedback on that, because I've been in projects that do just that. And
we talked about this in the very beginning. I think we've talked about self-certification against some robustness criteria, whatever you want to call it, right? And as long as you can demonstrate that you are, you comply with, what you need to comply with, yeah, sure, then it's in the project's interest to do it, and then then they're free to integrate their code into the mainstream.
But no, this is more like, I was thinking, let's say we're getting into this after the integration period, we do an RC0 or something that we pick out from the release branch. Then the CI/CD pipeline is running as always, right? So we know that it clears all those tests. But for somebody to grab this code, build it, and start do a system level test, we look at the community to do that. That's not something the project. We don't have the resources to do that type of work. That's
There's no misunderstanding there. It's just that what I'm saying is that participating companies typically have budgets that they deal with, right? And they allocate certain numbers of people on an annual basis. It's not always an option to like bring more of an army or less of an army to this community. And so what happened with ONAP is that, again, all of a sudden somebody said, let's do a maintenance release. Everybody said, good idea. And then when push came to shove, it turned out that didn't imply that a company X would field an additional 10 people to go do what needs to be done. And so what they did instead is slow down the feature ingest into the mainstream projects in the expense of,
Yeah, but I think everybody should think about, should we have maintenance releases or not? I think that's a very good point, Alex. But I just want to make sure that we understand that, just because we create a release branch, and now into that branch we accept no more features, it doesn't mean that the development branch is closed. Anybody can throw in features, just like always.
Sure. Yeah. And you can choose to backport certain bug fixes into existing releases. That's fine too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to have many discussions around this and detail it. This is just an initial draft, right? And I think we should take inputs. Like if most people don't like maintenance releases, let's remove them from the proposal, right? No issues.
Okay.
Just so I understand, Jonas, is the idea here that once you have a given release, some set of developers continue working on future development, and some set of developers in this proposal here work on bug fixes, and there's an integration and merge in the integration period.
Typically, you will have the development branch, and then now you say you will hit this integration period, right? And you will basically create the release branch, and where you do all your integration testing, and if you find any bugs, you will fix the bugs. It doesn't mean that. I mean, this is something that we will see from HPE side. We're interested in this because we are going to have a commercial release, so we're going to provide bug fixes and all that. The development branch is completely open for new features in the meantime. And then when you have an RC release, we are going to test it, and we hope other community members will test it as well and provide issues in Git and try to address those. I think during the RC phase, it's typically you will only address the bigger issues and not the small ones. But then,
No, go ahead. Please finish.
No. Yeah, I think we're running out of time, but that's just my mind. I mean, we're completely open here to have a discussion around this. If we want to go in another direction, no issues. But we don't want the project to stop developing just because we are basically getting ready to do a release.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Understood. Okay.
Right. I'm going to have to jump, guys, but let's pick this up next week again.
Thank you, Susan, for your presentation.
Well, sure. And great discussion. And
Susan, can you post
continue?
Can you post this on the wiki so we can look at it and comment online as well if need be?
Yes, go ahead.
We don't have the presentation there, I think, but we have the real document there. But we can also upload the presentation.
Yeah, if you can, that would be good for equal access, all that. So
okay,
I'll put that on the same page.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.